Here's something you have to hear. If you're not holding regular one-on-one meetings with each one of your people, you're not leading. You're just surviving. And survival in this business doesn't come from skill. It comes from luck. But luck always runs out. And when it does, it's your team, your dealers, your customers, your auction lanes that pay the price.
I'm Rich Levene, and this is Meet Me at the Gate, where we're not just talking theory, we're tackling real-world problems head-on, driving solutions that supercharge productivity and team dynamics. Every episode is a journey towards improvement, empowering you, the manager, to lead with innovation and confidence. Join us to transform everyday roadblocks into highways for success.
So, let me start with the blunt truth. If you're not consistently doing one-to-one meetings with your people, then luck is the only thing keeping you alive as a manager. And luck always runs out. Here's what I mean. Managers come to me and say, Rich, I'm having problems with so-and-so in condition reports. Or we're struggling with titles. Or the sales guys aren't hitting his number. And I ask the same question every single time. When was your last one-to-one with them? And I already know the answer. It's silence, because they haven't done a one-to-one. And that silence tells me everything I need to know. They're not leading, they're just surviving. Now, I want to paint two different stories from the auction floor. Story number one, a CR rider keeps making small mistakes, missing announcements, rushing inspections. The dealer gets burned, arbitrations get filed, and suddenly the entire lane is disrupted. When leadership digs in, they discover the CR rider has been overwhelmed for months, but no one knew because no one asked. The issue could have been caught early with consistent one-to-ones. Story number two, the same scenario, but this time the manager meets weekly with their CR team and each rider. The rider admits, hey, I'm struggling to balance accuracy with speed. Together, they fix the process, reduce arbitrations, and protect the lane. The difference isn't luck. The difference is leadership. So today, I'm going to give you 3 questions that will change the way you lead in the auction business. These 3 questions can transform your one-to-ones, improve your team chemistry, and help you coach every single member of your team more effectively, whether they're on the block, in the lanes, or behind a desk. And here's the kicker. They're simple, almost too simple. But simple doesn't mean easy, because the magic is not in the questions. The magic is in the discipline of consistency. So why do one-to-ones matter anyway? Well, because in this business, things never slow down. Cars arrive, cars sell, titles flow, arbitration happens, recon turns. It never stops. And in that chaos, managers convince themselves, my team knows what to do. They'll speak up if they're a problem. I don't need to sit down with them. That's just plain lazy. That's management. Leadership says we slow down enough to meet because people matter more than processes. Here's the pattern I see again and again. When arbitration is high, when buyers are frustrated, when titles are stacking up, managers finally pull people aside for a talk. But when arbitration drops, when titles flow, when the block runs smoothly, they cancel. They assume, hey, everything's fine. That's management. But leadership says something different. Leadership says, we meet anyway. We build rhythm. We protect the habit. Now think about your best people for a moment. The lot coordinator who never complains. The block clerk who's always on time. That sales rep who quietly hits his quota every single month. Managers have a tendency to ignore those people. Leaders double down on them because here's the truth. High performers don't leave because of pay alone. They leave because they don't feel seen and they don't feel valued. I've seen both outcomes. I've seen top performers walk out the door because no one's invested time in them. They were taken for granted. And I've seen employees grow into leaders themselves because someone kept showing up for them week after week after week, even when things weren't smooth. One-to-ones are your insurance policy. They're your oil changes. Skipping them, just like skipping oil changes on a fleet truck, you're going to pay the price later. So if you think you don't have time for one-to-ones in an auction environment, let me tell you something. You don't have time not to do them. So here's a reflection moment. When's the last time you sat down with your best people? Not because they had a problem, but because you wanted to check in. If the answer is, I can't remember, then you're surviving on luck. You're not leading with intention. All right, let's get practical. Here are the 3 questions you need to be asking in every one-to-one meeting. Number 1, what's working well? This question starts with the wins. In auctions, we're trained to spot problems. A deal fell apart, a title came in wrong, arbitration blew up. We're firefighters by nature. That's management. But leadership says we start with wins because wins fuel energy. So ask, what's working well for you right now? Now let me give you 3 auction world scenarios. The CR says the new CR Simplified tool is saving you time. Management nods and moves on. Leadership asks, what part of it works best? How do we roll out the rest of it to the team? The title clerk says, the new checklist cut down on errors. Management says, great, keep it up. Leadership celebrates. That's huge. That just saved us rework and dealer frustration. A sales rep might say, I closed 3 dealers this week. And management says, that's your job. Leadership digs in. What'd you do differently? How can we repeat that with others? See the pattern? Wins are insight. They tell you what energizes your people. They tell you what's scalable. They tell you where to double down. And when you celebrate wins, you live your values. Trust grows when people know you notice. Hope grows when wins are shared. Humility grows when you give the credit to them. Empathy grows when you acknowledge how much effort went into the success. So here's another reflection moment. Think about your last one-to-one. Did you start with wins or did you dive straight into the problems? Question number 2. What's not working well? This is the question most managers avoid. Why? Because it can get really messy. But if you're not asking this, you're flying blind. Let's take the auction floor. A driver says, we're short-staffed and cars are bottlenecking at check-in. Management says, we're doing the best we can. Leadership asks, how much is it slowing us down? What's the impact on the lanes? Or perhaps in titles, an employee says, we're getting too many incomplete packets from the sales team. Management says, just deal with it. Leadership asks, what would fix it? How do we make the handoff smoother? Or in sales, a rep says, dealers aren't returning my calls. Management just shrugs. Leadership leans in. What's your approach? What's getting in the way? How can I coach you? Words are just words until you attach emotion to them. If you hear it as an attack, you get defensive. If you hear it as feedback, you can improve. This is where your values matter most. Trust says, it's safe to tell me the truth. Hope says, we can improve this together. Humility says, I don't know everything. And empathy says, I get why this is frustrating. If you're not asking this question in your one-to-ones, then you're blind to what's broken. And in the auction business, broken processes don't just slow you down, they cost you clients. So think about this. When's the last time you told your people something wasn't working before it turned into a full-blown crisis? All right, question number 3. How can I help you? This is by far the most powerful question in leadership because it flips the whole script. Managers push tasks down. That's management. Leadership lifts people up. Picture this on the block. A clerk says, I can't keep up when the lane is hot. Management says, figure it out. Leadership says, what tools would help? Can we adjust the flow or add support? Or in sales, a rep says, I'm struggling to get meetings with dealers. Management sales says, that's sales, toughen up. Leadership says, let's sit down. What's your approach? Who can I introduce you to? How can I help you open doors? This question says, I'm here to support you. I'm here to clear obstacles. I'm here to make you successful. And here's where hope shines. In my book, I wrote, every client should be believable, achievable, understandable, but make no promises it will be easy to execute. These 3 questions are believable, they're achievable, and they're understandable, but they're not easy to execute because execution takes discipline, showing up every week, asking consistently, following through. That's leadership. Skipping them, hoping things work out themselves, that's management. So ask yourself, when was the last time you asked, how can I help you? And you really meant it. So this same framework works beautifully in team meetings. You just have to adjust the questions. So here's what I say. Hey, give me some recent wins. What's challenging us right now? And what are your suggestions? So recent wins. Think about your last block huddle. Did you start with wins or did you jump straight into announcements and complaints? Managers skip the wins. That's management. Leadership says we build momentum by celebrating progress. So here are some examples. Hey, arbitration was down 20% this week. That's a win. Check-in shaved off 15 minutes off average wait time. That's huge. When you spotlight wins, you set a tone of energy and pride. Question 2. What's challenging us right now? This is where options get real. Maybe it's buyers frustrated with announcements. Maybe it's reconditioning delays. Maybe it's sales packets that are incomplete. Managers get defensive. That's just management. Leadership strips away the emotion and says, okay, what impact is this having? What's one thing we can do differently? Feedback is fuel. And if you want a continuous improvement, you need people to name the problems out loud. And then the third question, what are your suggestions? This is a gold mine, but here's the truth. Most people stay silent. They haven't learned. Why bother? Nothing changes. But that's management. Leadership proves otherwise. Leadership acts on it and makes sure it happens. Leaderships admit, I don't have all the answers. And leadership says, your ideas matter. And when you live those values, trust, hope, humility, and empathy, suggestions start flowing. Small improvements compound. And continuous improvement becomes the culture. Think about your last team meeting. Did your people leave with energy or did they leave drained? If you're not doing one-to-ones, you're not leading. You're managing. You're surviving on luck, and luck will run out. Managers make excuses. That's management. Leadership makes commitments. So here's your challenge. This week, put a one-to-one on the calendar. Don't cancel it. Don't treat it as optional. Sit down with your team member and ask, what's working well? What's not working well? How can I help you? Then bring it to your team meeting and ask the group, hey, what are our recent wins? What's challenging us? What are your suggestions? Because leadership isn't about control. It's not about micromanaging every detail. It's about building trust, showing consistency, and giving your people the space to succeed. And remember, every plan should be believable, achievable, and understandable, but never expect it to be easy to execute. That's leadership. Managers avoid the hard stuff. Leaders do the hard stuff anyway. So don't rely on luck to carry your auction forward. Don't rely on luck to keep your team together. Show up, ask the questions, build the culture. Thanks for joining me on this solo episode of Meet Me at the Gate. If this has helped you, share it with a manager who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe and connect with me on LinkedIn. Until next time, stop managing and start leading.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Meet Me at the Gate. I hope the conversations help to fuel your drive and equip you with insights to steer your team towards success. Remember, the road to success is always under construction. And until next time, keep your engines revving and your gas tanks full.